Good morning, Rosemarie. It's so good to have you on here again.
Good to see you,
Uh,
Mary.
thank you. I am just really excited about this. Um, what did you call it? It was the roadway to homebuyership.
Oh, the road to homeownership.
Yep,
Yeah.
the road to homeownership.
The road to homeownership. It depends on when you start. Some people don't even know they're starting because they're starting young with credit and savings.
Hmm.
Road to homeownership, point A to point B, and I'm here to guide you through.
Awesome. Awesome. What is so nice is I was thinking about this. We bought our first house when I was like 21 or 22.
Good for
Didn't
you.
didn't know what we were doing.
Nope.
Huh. And we lost that house by the time I was 23 because
No.
we didn't know what we were doing. And that was during, of course, the 1980s when we talk about high interest rates. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. 20%.
really. Yeah, I heard of
Yeah.
eight near 20. Yeah.
Yeah. A 20% interest rate.
Uh-huh.
And it was amazing, I look back now and realize all the mistakes that we made. But um, this is why we're doing this.
Got
It's
you to the next step, right?
to
It got,
avoid the mistakes.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Because everybody thinks, oh, home ownership and you have things in your mind. Oh, we're gonna get a home, we're gonna have children, we're gonna do this, we're gonna, do all these things. And it, nobody learns in high school what they need in order to buy a home.
I'm gonna tell you, when I was in elementary school, sixth grade, we went to camp. Before we went to camp, they taught us how to do a checking account. And they did that because we were going to have snacks and we have a little account and they didn't want money around. So they took the opportunity to teach us about checking accounts. I still balance my checking account.
Well, that's awesome. Unfortunately, I mean, even though I taught my kids how to balance a checking account with
Huh?
today's, instant, they don't
Just,
balance it anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's a whole different ball game.
Huh?
Okay. So let's go over what we talked about last week, which was getting a pre-approval that's not just an estimate, but that's a documented pre-approval, so you really understand. Because I think that starting on the road to homeownership, it's so important to begin with your finances.
Oh, yeah.
Begin with, you know, talking to a mortgage originator such as yourself who can guide you in the right place so that you know how much house you can afford, what your payments will be, not just kind of this estimate thrown into the wind, and you know the type of loan that you actually will be looking for.
Exactly. Now, it's important to remember that even the best pre-approval, even when it turns into a real deal when they buy a house, it's always an estimate. Okay. On the pre-approval, what makes a difference is property taxes. So if I use $100 a month in property taxes, that person is going to qualify for much more of a house than if I use $200 a month for taxes. So if they're under, they need to get a good handle on what are we using for taxes, what are we using for insurance, because that's part of a scenario. Plus, what are we using for interest rate? Interest rates change every day, a couple times a day. This is an estimate, but it's based, the pre-approval, when it's done correctly, it's about as good as you can get. For example, I was talking to somebody who's working with some buyers that I'm working with. And he called me up and he says, like, what's going on? And, they have a house to sell and he needed to help them get their ducks in a row so that when they go out, they're actually going to get a fruitful offer. Um, so he was asking me about it. And I said, yeah, here's the thing. A lot of lenders these days have changed the way they do things. I mean, it started out 30 years ago where we would just talk to people on the phone. We'd write a pre-qualification letter. Sometimes we didn't even run a credit report. We just asked them about it. Well, then loan officers started having access to credit reports. So we do that, a more enhanced pre-qualification. Then we started getting paperwork to back up the pre-qualifications. Then we learned, then the loan officers got to go on the computer and automated underwriting. And, more and more, some people went directly to underwriting before they got a pre-approval. So it's changing. And so now, especially since the Dodd-Frank Act, that really encourages shoppers to be able to effectively communicate, effectively shop. They've, well, there's always been some kind of loan estimate. It says different names and different formats, but you need to give out a loan estimate to somebody within 3 days of their application when they find a house. But here's the thing, the government says you should shop for the best rate and best points, best fees. But customers don't always know what they're looking for. They want the best rate, best rate, best rate. They say, okay, rate and points. Let me figure out how many rate and points are, and then I'll shop that way. You can shop with the annual percentage rate, and that's pretty much the most effective way of shopping. But you got to go through the whole mortgage process before you do it. So you got to go through 3 different lenders, let's say. And then now the lender, instead of developing a relationship with the people, they're getting, we know you go 1 to 3. So if you buy a house and you're competing against 2 other people, you got a 1 in 3 shot at chances of getting the deal. So a lot of times lenders, if they've only the 30% chance of actually getting paid, because lenders don't get paid. They don't get paid for the credit report. They don't get paid for the personnel that looks at their file. I mean, loan officers usually are on straight commission, but nobody's paid for that time. If it goes to underwriting, nobody's paying for that. Nobody's paying anything towards until people close on the house. So now, if you're lucky, you got a 33% chance of actually getting the deal. So we want to cut costs until we're closer to actually getting the deal, right? I mean, it's what people do, right? Companies too. So then we go into this market. Now, I'm working with one customer right now who started working with me in 2017, and he hasn't found a house yet. He was qualified back then, but he hasn't found a house yet. So I can't even remember how many times I ran a credit report on him, how much, that kind of stuff, collecting his documents. So now lenders, from the lender's perspective, are looking at, okay, we got a 1 in 10 chance of getting paid on this deal. What we got to do is minimize the amount of money we're spending up front. So we don't pay the loan officers for their time. That's one way they go. Since the loan officers aren't paid for the time, they maybe got a 1 in 10 chance, and I'm just pulling that number out of the air, of actually getting paid. What are they going to do? Well, they got to get more people in the pipeline. They got to get, okay, instead of 10 people, you got to have 100 people in the pipeline. So if you're working with 100 people, you're either putting in 10 times more work, hours, that you're not getting necessarily paid for, or you're reducing your level of service until the people have a purchase agreement. It ends up hurting the customer. Now you got some old timers like me. Talked to a realtor yesterday. He says, okay, so yeah, a lot of these realtors, they really don't let, they don't like lenders they don't know. I'm like, well, they're gonna know me pretty soon, as soon as they give me a call. And I said, yeah, I will send you a pre-qualification letter. I'm not going to send you a pre-approval letter right now, because I've already been working with this customer for 4 months. So all I did was a soft pull on their credit report, and their credit was really good. So I wasn't really worried about it. And I said, no, I just did a single vendor soft file credit report, which doesn't have everything, but it gave me a really good idea that they're really credit worthy. So credit reports are costing $100, right? Do lenders want to spend $100 every 4 months? In some cases you'd be spending, eventually the customer is going to have to pay for that if they go with you. If they don't go with you, then the lender is on the hook for it. So it's just, take a look at when people are encouraged, and I don't think shopping is a bad thing. I think that you should get the best person and a fair deal. But when you shop till you drop, you don't necessarily know all the intricacies. Oh, interest rates at 5.75. They didn't mention it was an adjustable rate with 2 points. It makes a difference. So I think the most important part of the whole pre-approval process is, first of all, find somebody you're comfortable with. Okay, you can shop the rate with them and say, okay, if I were closing today based on what would my interest rate be? And you can get an idea. But respect people's time. They're giving it to you for free until you close. If you don't close, this is what we're doing in our spare time. Hey, I don't mind talking about mortgages, but this is what I do to pay my mortgage.
Right.
So when you're working with commissioned people and you're working in a situation where there's a lot of competition and the chances of that lender getting paid are very, very low, you either, do one of two things. You get a half-baked pre-approval, or you find somebody that knows what they're talking about, can answer their questions, knows who to ask when they can't answer the questions, because sometimes it's just discretion that the decision maker gets to make. But loyalty, and that's something that's missing in today's market. It's loyalty. It's everybody's out for themselves, and I understand. I mean, a lot of people got taken advantage of. I flash back to the mortgage meltdown. Before that, I'm like, hey, watch out, that's not going to be good for you. Nobody listened to me. Hey, I want 1% interest rate. It's not really 1%. A lot of people got burned. Why? Because when they were getting pre-approved and they were going through the process, the loan officer just told them the interest rate. And they didn't give them all the details until they actually had the house. So when they house, they got the disclosure. All the disclosure back then, the printing was tiny. And, I'm a master of business with a whole bunch of time in the mortgage business, but reading those disclosures was hard for me. So a lot of people can get fooled. Now, some of those things have changed. Now they need full disclosure, but how many people actually read all those paperwork? I mean,
Well,
I
that's a
I
lot of it
didn't
too.
disclosure on Zoom.
Yeah, how many people read all those paperwork? I remember when I was doing notary and would go and close, with a lender, and 100 pages is not, I mean, that's average. And you're going through 100 pages. I would describe each paper that they were signing, allow them time to read it if they wanted. 95% of them never read it.
Nobody reads it. Now,
Never read it.
if
Yeah.
you if you if you get a lawyer's package prior to closing,
Mm-hmm.
then you can take your time and read it. But the truth is, most of that stuff that you're signing is all determined by the state. And
Or
something, no, you can't
yeah,
change anything. Cross
yeah,
it out. No, you're not getting a loan.
yeah, exactly. So, there's, I liked how you said the lawyer's packet. You can ask for that ahead of time. I do know that a lot of companies really grumble and complain about that, but it really is helpful, especially if you're signing legal documents. And if there is a potential for, you know, problems with the house or whatever, it's good to have an attorney review your document.
Now, you two things, an attorney package from a mortgage company. The only time they grumble about it, the reason they grumble about it is because lawyers want 3 days before closing. So you've got to do the paperwork, you know,
Hmm.
much sooner than closing. So that just delays things. Nobody cares about pushing the button and sending it to an attorney. Nobody's care, but they care about, oh yeah, okay, so now the attorney wants, 3 days. Okay, so I give it to him on Monday and we can't close till Thursday. Okay, well, then you've got the seller going, I need my money. I got to close my other house. So that is, tell people ahead of time and then set the expectations. Okay, I'm going to need an attorney package. I got to get it 3 days before, so we got to schedule closing. So I mean, it's all doable. And
Hmm.
nobody cares about it except for the time is of the essence part.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Okay, so we talked last week about types of loans, and one of the types typically for new home buyers has been Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, and you,
FHA.
yeah, FHA, and uh, talk about a little bit about the requirements for an FHA loan versus, if you had just a conventional loan.
Sure. In general, the terms are just a little bit, the underwriting guidelines are a little bit different. We used to have guidelines that were pretty firm. Now we got the computer deciding when it's okay. So in general, you can qualify for more. You can have a higher debt ratio on FHA generally. You can have less favorable credit. You know, for example, if I've got somebody under 680, my first shot is going to be FHA because their interest rates are going to be better and their mortgage, if they don't have much money down, especially in their mortgage insurance, is going to be a bit better. So, I mean, in general, conventional loans are for more pristine customers, but you can still do it with low money down. You know, they have loans up to 97% of the loan to value, which is, you know, and there's still closing costs involved. And then FHA, it's a 3.5% down payment. But little things like on a conventional with the 3% down payment, you can only get 3% seller concessions. On an FHA with 3.5%, you can get 6% seller's concessions. So the rules are like a little bit different that way. Mortgage insurance works a little differently, but and you can read the general guidelines. You can go online and get a general education. But there are a lot of twists and turns in every little, you know, different kinds of loans. Well, we can't do it this loan because of this. But we can do it on this loan. And quite honestly, a lot of the loans are pretty similar, are getting pretty similar. Now, the conventional is more sensitive to interest, to credit score. Interest rate is more sensitive to credit score than the FHAs are. But generally, there are fantastic programs, and I've had customers wanting to know everything that I know about every product available. Like, nope.
Yeah. So I want
Nope.
to take you back to seller concessions. Some people might not know what that is. Can you tell me what that is?
A selling concession, it's something negotiated by the real estate agent, and it's when the sellers pay some of the buyer's closing costs.
Okay. All right. So when
However, with that said, a rational seller is not going to contribute to somebody else's closing costs unless that is the best deal they have available considering. So if you've got $100,000 and somebody wants you to $100,000 sale, somebody wants you to pay $3,000 and the other person wants to give you 100,000 and doesn't want you to pay anything.
Mhm.
If everything else is equal, who are you going to go with? Right? And in this
Yes.
market, oh, I want the sellers to pay all my costs. Well, so do I. You know.
And that is a true thing, because when you're looking at the market, there, is a variance. If you've got um a lot of people bidding on one house, a lot of times if that the listing price was 200,000, you've got five people that are looking at this house that are throwing in offers.
And they're
That
selling for 230.
exactly, exactly. So there's a whole uh picture to look at, that you really have to decide, this is a great house, but what can I do where, when there's five.
So once you know how much you can afford to pay and you got an idea of what the sale price is going to be because you know your location and you've done your research,
Mhm.
that's what the real estate agent helps to negotiate. I mean, some people say, why do I need a real estate agent? I can go into computer and Zillow and all these realtor.com and I can find these houses. I can call direct to the listing agent and I'll get a better deal.
That's a good start, because you're talking today about finding a realtor,
Mhm.
and you're good start. Why? And I think it's one big thing is that it's protection. Yeah, it's protection,
Somebody to work
because
on your best interests. Exactly.
exactly, and that's what you want. You want someone to work on your best interest. So when you're looking to find a realtor, let me back up. There are, the listing agent, which is they have the best interest of their seller.
Correct. They are the ones responsible. The fiduciary responsibility is to the seller.
Mhm.
So, in fact, if you're dealing with a listing agent, and you can talk to a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a realtor, but in general, you talk to the listing agent, I would pay 250,000 for this house, but let's start in at 230. Well, who's paying? Who's paying the listing agent? The seller.
Mhm.
Who's the listing agent representing? So if a buyer were to tell a listing agent that, they'd be under, in my opinion, obligated to tell the seller, let's hold out. Let's hold out. He said he'd pay 250. Let's just wait.
Mhm.
So you got to be careful. Is the listing agent representing you? If you're the buyer, no. Is a dual agent representing you? Dual agents, they still have dual agencies. Real estate agents are better to explain all the ins and the outs, the whys and the wherefores. But from my perspective, as a loan officer, if you're a dual agent, that means you have to be honest with both parties. Okay. But how can you really represent the best interest of two people? That's what some real estate agents are telling me.
Mhm.
Again, that is, but so when you're making a decision on, what do you need a real estate agent for? You think you can do the research yourself. Maybe you're very savvy at negotiations. Okay. Do you really know all the laws and all the implications of real estate? I don't know all the real estate laws. I've been in this business 30 years. I'm a mortgage banker. So, but so you get an idea, but there is a legal responsibility between real estate agents and buyers or sellers.
And that's
The
why they have a buying contract, buyer's agent contract and a selling agent's contract, because it is particular to the seller or the buyer. And when you have a dual agent, just as you said, it's really not possible to have both interests in mind. And then there's a third factor here that you have to look at. This is how they get paid. And they get paid on the selling price.
or the mortgage amount in the case of the lender. Yeah.
Exactly. So to have someone who is representing both the seller and the buyer, or to have a broker who has two agents that are representing both the seller and the buyer, can be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I mean, it's debatable, and I'm not really going to get into that because that's not really my line of expertise. But I mean, that's the kinds of things you should decide on. Now, if you want a buyer's agent, okay, a buyer's agent, in general, buyers don't pay for the buyer's agent. Okay, in general, there's laws and laws of settlements, and I haven't really done any deep dive in that. But the buyer is being represented by the buyer's agent. And again, it goes back to loyalty. People go, well, I'll go with the first realtor who shows me something I like. I want them all jumping through hoops. I want them all jumping to serve me the best. If you put everybody on a $2,500 retainer fee, it might work, right? But if you're looking to buy a house and every agent can give you every house available on the multi-listing service,
Mm-hmm.
and they can help you work with for sale by owners.
Mm-hmm.
So you're duplicating efforts. You're like, well, I'm looking in Zillow. Zillow might be totally out of date, right? Some of the other websites that you can find houses, that doesn't mean those houses are actually still available. I mean, it's for advertising, the purpose of show, and it'll come down or still show sold or whatever eventually. But the whole purpose is to get you to make a phone call, which is advertising, which is not bad. But the whole point is to get connected with somebody, because all the realtors have access to the same houses in a locality. So if you are not loyal to a realtor, if you're not responding to their, you want this house, it's in your qualifying range, it's in the place you want, it's got all the features you want, let's take a look at it tonight. Well, I'm busy tonight. Tomorrow it's gone in this market. Okay. So and then you're like, well, I want to go out Saturday and looking at houses. Oh, everybody wants to go out Saturday and look at houses because we got the day off, right? Most people. So they go out and they look 4 or 5 houses, right? And then they want to think about it. And you should not make a house purchases emotional. Okay. Buy something.
Absolutely. That's a huge one. Don't make real estate or house purchases emotional. Don't get attached to your real estate. It is an asset, but it's not, you know, people get attached to their real estate
Well,
and
it's a
it's difficult.
it's a home. But when
Mhm.
you're, I mean, this is a home. This is, I mean, and one of the things that makes my job feel fulfilling is that a home is not just a financial investment. A home, you always have to pay for a place to live. A home is family. A home um is safety, is a haven. So this is the, I mean, and yes, you can, the home is the heart part of it. The house is the home part of it resides in the house.
Yeah, but I think that this is where the caveat comes in. And that is that if you are looking at a house and you're like, oh, I love this. This is perfect. I got to have this house. That emotional trigger, you're going to pay more in a lot of things because of that emotional trigger. You always need to look at things very circumspectly, especially when it comes to a home, whether it's a brand new home or whether it's a home that's been on the market for, a while, or, it was built 100 years ago. There are going to be things that you're going to have to fix in that home. I've seen brand new homes where the first time the person sits down on the toilet seat, it breaks.
Mhm.
And you're like, why is the plumbing leaking in a brand new home? So there's always these things. If you are emotionally attached to that home, you cannot see clearly. And I think that that's where it's really important to be. This is a house. It is where I'm going to call
Mhm.
my
It's
home.
not a home till you put your family in. It's a house
Exactly.
and not a home till you get your family in there. But before you get your family in there, is that going to be the right house
Right.
for your home? And that's part of the reason I think it's important to have a real estate agent. Because
Absolutely.
that real estate agent is kind of a buffer. You don't walk through the house. Not all sellers are there. Usually they leave, but
Hmm.
I remember when I was buying my house and there was 2 people and they might have been in their 70s or 80s. And I thought that was old then. And I don't think it's old so much anymore. Um, but they were elderly. They did not leave their house. They sat in one room on a couch quietly. They didn't follow us around and I didn't have a problem with it. But, and I was walking through 10 houses that day. So I was taking notes meticulously. And I'm not your typical buyer because I had already been in the mortgage business for quite some time. So the lady, they didn't think I loved the house. When I put in an offer, the man had a heart issue. It wasn't a heart attack, but he got stressed out. This is they were here for 18 years, right? So they wanted to sell the house to somebody who was going to love it, quite literally love it as much as they did.
Hmm.
But that's not something, and I didn't do this on purpose, but that's not something I demonstrated walking through the house. I'm like, okay, this bedroom, oh, that's a good sized bedroom. Good. Okay. This kitchen's kind of old. I'll have to, oh, the basement, you know. And I looked at it and I'm sure she thought I was an investor because I had that. So I mean, I got a deal on the house. I got it for a little bit less than asking price. And at the closing, that's when I turned into the first time home buyer. I'm gonna change the cupboards. I'm gonna redo the basement. She goes, oh, she called me Mrs. Ashley. Mrs. Ashley, I'm so glad. I didn't think you were really gonna love the house, and we didn't want to sell it to somebody who wasn't gonna love it as much as you. And I'm so glad you're gonna love the house. And That kind of stuff can happen at the closing table just fine. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do this. And I was an excited little first time home buyer. Okay. The closing table is the time for that. The closing table, not when you're making the decision and not when you're negotiating the deal. That's why you have a real estate agent. They do the negotiation. Now, my real estate agent was a bit extreme at closing. He goes, all right, first thing you go clean. And I looked at him. I could have eaten off the floors, man. This house has never, ever been that clean. And the mother and the daughter were like, I'm like, no, that house is clean. So anyway, very, very good in terms of negotiating, right? Are you kidding me? We gotta pay for this. There's the carpet is faded. All right, yeah, I pulled the carpet out. It didn't matter. That was negotiating. That was negotiating. That's the dispatch. You don't have emotions.
Right.
You don't go into this, well, you have emotions, but you don't go into this. You go into this as, is it going to suit my family or my needs?
Yes.
And that's a good reason to have a real estate agent, because there's a buffer. When you're negotiating, you don't see the wives crying and the kids. No, you got two professionals. You don't even talk to each other anymore. They might call on the phone. They don't even talk to each other face to face, which is a bummer, because the buyer's agents used to present to the sellers. And now they don't even want they don't want love letters from buyers. I really love your house. I want to buy it. Now they're a little concerned about that. That might be allowed for discrimination. Oh, she's got 3 kids and this person doesn't have any. So let's give it to the 3. I don't know. There's a lot of different that real estate agents are going to do that, but the real estate agents are going to guide you through that process, like I'm going to guide you through the mortgage process. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. So we got to, when you're picking a real estate agent, again, the first thing you want to look at is somebody who's got the expertise and a personality you can live with, be married to for a few months.
Our time is running out, so we'll take a short break and be back again. And I will talk to you in just a few minutes.
You, Mary.